answers? I think I'm entitled. You want answers? I want the truth! You can't handle the truth!
This is Larry Connors USA. Larry Connors USA.
I woke up this morning, got myself a gun. Mama always said I'd be the chosen one.
My fellow Americans, this is Liberation Day. Waiting for a long time. April 2nd, 2025 will forever be remembered as the day American industry was reborn, the day America's destiny was reclaimed, and the day that we began to make America wealthy again. Going to make it wealthy, good and wealthy.
That all sounds great, does it not? But there's a fly in the ointment. Don't break out the champagne for everyone. I want to tell you what the Senate has done. Reference these efforts to move forward with Trump tariffs. And one senator in particular, and he's going to quote somebody to you that I'm sure many of you revere, and you might be astonished as to what he says in quoting him. But then again, this is a different day than then. Or is it? Thanks for joining us. Here we are, hour number one. Larry Connors USA on April 3rd, 2025. And reminding you, when we're on the air, we are streaming video. You can watch the program. You go to NewsTalkSTL, Rumble, Facebook, or Twitter. Larry Connors USA, Rumble, or Facebook. And everything goes up as a podcast later. And I see more and more of you are joining to listen to the podcast as well as making remarks about the live stream while we're on the air. I appreciate it. I apologize that I'm not responding to everyone individually. I'm not very organized sometimes, believe me. And I get behind, and then I'm trying to catch up on something else. But take this and please repeat it to others. I truly thank you and appreciate your support, as do my sponsors. The sponsors I have on this program, they endorse 100% patriotic American. And when you need one of their products, please use them. In fact, sometimes just take a moment to call them. Thank them for supporting Larry Connors USA and NewsTalkSTL. A reminder for you of something we've got coming up, and you're going to love this. You know April 15 is tax day. Yeah. Well, we've got something fun for you on April 16. It'll be taking place at the St. Charles Funny Bone. Good place to start. On April 16, AFP Missouri is going to carry what they call Torch the Tax, an evening with Mayor Glenn Jacobs, former WWE wrestler. That's right, Kane, the big guy. He's going to sit down. He's currently the mayor of Knox County, Tennessee. That's what they call them in the counties of Tennessee. They call their county leader a mayor. But he will be there, and it's going to be a fun time. It's not going to be dry and boring, I promise you. I don't know. I might challenge him to an arm wrestling match. What do you think? We'll see how that plays out. Americans for Prosperity. Again, that's St. Charles Funny Bone, April 16. Which reminds me, I haven't had time to look. I'm sure my accountant will let me know if I'm missing it. Yeah, April 15th falls on Tuesday this year, so your taxes are due by midnight that day. Normally, if it's a weekend, you get extra days. Not this time. So let's go back to the issue of the tariffs and so forth that Trump put in. Here's one clip of him where he really lays out great detail that many say summarizes everything that can be accomplished.
In the coming days, there will be complaints from the globalists and the outsourcers and special interests and the fake news. Fake news will always complain. But never forget, every prediction our opponents made about trade for the last 30 years has been proven totally wrong. They were wrong about NAFTA. They were wrong about China. They were wrong about the Trans-Pacific Partnership, which would have been a disaster if I didn't terminate it. If I didn't terminate that, United Auto Workers, you would have had no jobs in this country. You would have had no jobs. It was all going to other countries. In my first term, they said tariffs would crash the economy. Instead, we built the greatest economy in the history of the world. And again, I have great respect for President Xi of China, great respect for China, but they were taking tremendous advantage of us, and I commend them for that. I say, hey, if you can get away with it, that's okay. But, you know, they understand exactly what's happening, and they probably, most of them are saying it's about time they did something, but, and they're going to fight, and they're going to fight fair. Everyone's going to fight. You know, it's like, I say to the leaders, look, you got to take care of your country, but we have to start taking care of our country now. We can't do what we've been doing for the last 50 years.
Now, on base and face value, that sounds exactly the message we want to send to the rest of the world. And a lot of the other countries already are responding by either deciding to back off tariffs they've imposed on us, and in some cases, we're not actually hitting them true reciprocal, as Trump had originally talked about, that you tax us 25%, we're going to tax you 25%. In some cases, they may be taxing us 25%, and we're going to tax them only 12%. So it's not a total hit against them. And yet it should still encourage trade and bring more money in if you follow the way it's laid out. But not everyone does. Before I begin to break down the opposition, let's hear from our Commerce Secretary, who's going to oversee a lot of this. And he basically, Howard Lutnick says, you're looking at a renaissance.
They're going to want to negotiate, but these are the same people who have been ripping us off for all these years. Remember, the tariffs are only part of the issue. It's these non-tariff trade barriers where they just won't let you trade. They provide subsidies back, like they charge this VAT tax, right? And they always say, oh, it's not the VAT tax. You know what some of these countries do? They take that 20% tax and they give it back to their producers. So they crush our people. It's got to end, and what's going to happen is you're going to see the greatest renaissance of manufacturing in America. $4 trillion investing in America. That's going to create the most incredible set of jobs. Tradecraft is going to come back to America. People, you know, a high school educated workforce is going to get trained to do robot mechanic, you know, HVAC, but in high tech.
High tech. That is a big deal for us, isn't it? Not just manufacturing, but also in high tech. And again, that's Howard Lutnick, Commerce Secretary. Again, applauding and being a cabinet member going along with Trump. You'd expect that. But you can go beyond that. You can go to Congressman Riley Moore of West Virginia.
What a great day here at the White House, Liberation Day. This marks the liberation of our industrial base here in the country, the liberation of communities that have been crushed by globalization for decades, and the liberation of the American worker and the family. The era of economic surrender is finally over, and I'm hearing lots of great things from my district back in West Virginia. There are many West Virginians here today, so excited to support the president and this historic executive order.
So there you have a state representative, obviously Republican, saying it's going to be good for West Virginia. House Speaker Mike Johnson, obviously on board. Mike Johnson speaking out, one of the 7 speakers that might have been appearing yesterday, but his timing was right on cue.
We've been unfairly treated for so long. The president made a good point in the Rose Garden. He said no previous president really has had the guts to stand up and do what must be done to fix this disparity. So we would expect the stock market to react in the way it is, but I think it will settle out. What I think is going to happen here is that the reciprocal trade policy, he calls it the fair reciprocal trade policy, right? We're not even going to do to other countries what they're doing to us, but we're going to try to make that more even. I think what it will do is open up the negotiating table. I think these other countries, leaders from these other countries, allies, and others who trade with us are going to come to the table and say, okay, we'll reduce our import tariffs on America's and Americans' goods, and then we'll make this more fair. You can't have free trade unless you have fair trade. Ronald Reagan used to make that point, and Donald Trump is making it, and now he's acting upon it, and I think that the time has come for this action.
All right, so you heard him quote Ronald Reagan. Therein lies an issue, possibly. Senator Rand Paul is one of those speaking out against these tariffs. And here's what happened in the Senate. The Senate voted 51-48 to pass a resolution terminating Trump's emergency declaration to impose these 25% tariffs on Canada, and obviously against all the other tariffs. The base position of Rand Paul is he's doing this on an emergency measure specifically against Canada to stop the flow of fentanyl, but he's using it to use it all across the globe. Rand Paul has words hidden. He goes back to quoting economist Milton Friedman and Ronald Reagan.
To those who still call themselves conservatives but now support tariffs, let me remind them that Milton Friedman said tariffs raise prices to consumers and waste our resources. To those who still have a fond memory of Ronald Reagan on my side, Ronald Reagan said, protectionism costs consumers billions of dollars, damages the overall economy, and destroys jobs. Ronald Reagan's vision for America can be seen in our trading relationships with Canada. In 1986, President Reagan said, our trade policy rests firmly on the foundation of free and open markets. I recognize the inescapable conclusion that all history has taught. The freer the flow of world trade, the stronger the tides of human progress and peace among nations. And it's absolutely true.
Now, reference Reagan. There are several places I could go for items to back Rand Paul up on that, but also some that might undermine him. If I go to the Washington Post, which obviously is a great, great conservative publication, not, they want to headline it saying that basically Reagan would be against this. But I'll go to another source, Arizona Republic, which I don't know if it leans left or right, but they have an opinion writer that says Ronald Reagan schools Trump on the stupidity of tariffs, stating Reagan believed trade wars are detrimental to all countries involved and that tariffs often create a reliance on government protection and stifle innovation. I don't doubt Reagan said that, but I'm still not sure what is in context with today's world. Rand Paul has his view. You probably have yours, but again, out of the Senate with 53 members of the GOP on board, 47 Democrats, the Senate voted 51-48, terminating Trump's emergency declaration to impose 25% tariffs on Canada. This did not affect the others, and the House passed appropriation, or rather the Trump executive order so far. We're going to break it down more in the second hour for you coming up. But first, let's focus on how terrorists, I should say, are infiltrating our universities constantly. One case, as you well know, Mahmoud Khalil, facing deportation, fighting against it. There's a Middle East voice warning what Khalil represented if he could do what he wanted. And here's a translation of the warning.
Mahmoud Khalil is not an isolated case. The American universities, which attract students from all over the world, have become a strategic target for extremist organizations because the student visa programs allow foreign students from various countries, including Palestinians, to attend them. But some of these students don't come just to study, but also to disseminate extremism and to foment hatred. In 2019, for example, an investigation of the American National Security Agency into a network of foreign students at the University of California revealed that they had used their academic positions to spread the extremist ideas of Al-Qaeda, and that there were other cases of this sort, like that of a Pakistani student at New York University who turned the university's student dorms into centers for recruiting young people to ISIS. These examples demonstrate how the universities can be used to inculcate extremist ideology.
And we certainly recognize that. And it's happening on a more consistent basis. That woman was quoting writings by Emirate political analyst Dr. Salim Al-Kati. And he says this is a trend of foreign-backed efforts, by Iran in particular, to infiltrate young minds. She continues with his thesis.
The troubling fact is that these universities are usually incapable of uncovering these instances or coping with them, due to their commitment to the principles of freedom of expression. Moreover, the competition between the world's universities makes them less conservative in their choice of students, which leaves them open to exploitation by foreign countries and elements. The extremist organizations exploit the concentrations of students and the culture clubs as fronts for disseminating their ideas. For example, groups were formed such as Students for Justice in Palestine, SJP, or Columbia University's Apartheid Divest, CUAD, which purport to promote humanitarian issues but usually just serve as a platform for disseminating discourse that is anti-Semitic or supportive of terrorism.
And that we understand. They pose as, well, we're supporting Palestine, but they're really supporting Hamas. They're really supporting from the river to the sea and eradicate Western civilization in totality. In 2023, a student group at the University of California, Berkeley, sparked controversy because it organized a conference on resistance to the occupation. The resistance to the occupation, they were talking about Jerusalem, Israel, trying to go into Gaza and get its people back, its hostages. So again, the professor from the Emirates says, take a look at what is happening, and you could look starting at 2012.
For instance, in 2012, a U.S. State Department investigation exposed a funding network designed to support Hamas via American charitable associations. This network enabled Hamas to expand its influence within these associations and use Palestinian and other foreign students to spread its ideas. If the charitable associations and humanitarian organizations are a traditional mechanism that is being used by dubious elements to finance terrorism, then the universities and academic institutions have been turned by the extremist organizations into a strategic platform for disseminating their ideas and recruiting supporters. This exploitation goes beyond financial or logistic assistance. It is aimed at infiltrating young minds and creating a new generation of activists who espouse extremist ideas without realizing that they are extremist.
And then they end up using these folks who've been exposed to extremism, don't realize they've become extremists, and they use them. They are the so-called useful idiots. I am going to spend more time on this terrorist takeover of our universities later in the second hour. But coming up, we're going to return to the tariff issue and the debate, good, bad, ugly. Look and load, ready on the right.
You are listening to Larry Connors, USA.
My sponsor, Wellington Environmental, has helped thousands deal with hazardous materials. Hospitals, offices, schools, even homes. Here's something new. Wellington now offers dustless blasting. This is just like sandblasting, but without all the dust and emissions. Wellington uses everything from ground glass, walnuts, corn, even dry ice pellets. One university had Wellington remove their parking lot striping because dustless blasting is fast and it does not damage the concrete. So as a business or homeowner, I'm sure you could use this process. Industrial tanks, swimming pools, graffiti on buildings. And in fact, Wellington is blasting a Texaco station that will be revised as an historic building. Check the website for details and photos. WellingtonSTL.com. WellingtonSTL.com. Ackerman Toyota is number one in sales for 2024. That is 2 years in a row. It's really no surprise. Ackerman has the largest customer lounge where you can relax, take your time choosing new or premium pre-owned. Ackerman at Hampton and 44. AckermanToyota.com. Thank you for making Ackerman Toyota number one 2 years in a row. AckermanToyota.com. Ackerman Toyota for life. John Bill Roofing reminds you we are in the stormy season, and that means if you have even the smallest leak in your roof, you could soon have a much bigger issue. Call the John Bill to make sure that your biggest investment is protected. That call can save you major dollars. If you do get hit during a storm, John Beal has a rapid response team. Call 1-800-NEW-ROOF. 1-800-NEW-ROOF. 1-800-NEW-ROOF, John Beal. Got a great fun idea for you. The Oak Street Inn and Lounge Speakeasy, now open, but you need a passcode to get in. Easy to get. Just visit the Oak Street Inn and Lounge Facebook. I got my code. Get yours. We'll gather at the Speakeasy. Oak Street Inn and Lounge in Cottleville. Plus, enjoy some fine dining. Visit the Oak Street Inn and Lounge Facebook for your Speakeasy passcode. Oak Street Inn and Lounge Facebook. Get your code now. This is great patio season to enjoy any of the Cafe Napoli locations, including Napoli Brothers Pizza and Pasta in Chesterfield. You'll be enjoying coal-fired pizza, nothing else like it. Napoli Brothers Pizza and Pasta in Chesterfield. A few doors down, Lit Cigar Lounge, where you can enjoy premium cigars, whiskeys, watch the Masters, a major UFC fight, baseball. Check for details at the Lit Cigar Lounge Facebook. Lit Cigar.
This is News Talk STL. This is Larry Connors USA. Larry Connors USA.
With regard to tariffs, let's be very clear. Tariffs are simply taxes. Tariffs don't punish foreign governments, they punish American families. When we tax imports, we raise the price of everything, from groceries to smartphones to washing machines to prescription drugs. Every dollar collected in tariff revenue comes straight out of the pockets of American consumers. Conservatives used to understand that tariffs are taxes on the American people. Conservatives used to be uniformly opposed to raising taxes because we wanted the private marketplace, the private individuals, to keep more of their income, so we were always for lower taxes. And yet now the mantra that's coming is we want higher taxes. What happened? Did we all of a sudden give up all the things we used to believe in as conservatives? I, for one, haven't. I still think more taxes is bad for the economy.
That is Senator Rand Paul, Kentucky. His closing remarks: I think more taxes is bad for the economy. I second. I think every American seconds more taxes is not good. What he's suggesting, though, is the tariffs we are imposing on other countries right now will end up being a tax on you. Trump had already acknowledged that. He said there might be some short-term pain in the beginning. And the market this morning began something like 1,400 down. Again, I want to caution you against watching the market day to day as to what it closed at today, what it opens at tomorrow. It's an indicator, but you don't bank on an indicator, or at least I wouldn't. You watch it, you monitor it, but you don't make your decision simply on, oh, today the market's going great, I should go out and buy everything. No. Or the market's falling apart, I should sell as quickly as I can. Or maybe it's a time to buy. I'll leave that financial decision to you and your advisors. Or one of my sponsors, Robert Leslie Jr., Leslie Consulting. But you make those decisions. But what Rand is trying to point out, that tariffs come back to bite you to some extent. And he will refer to, as you heard, if you were listening to the beginning, to the extent that even Ronald Reagan recognized that. We will go back down that road in this segment. But first, I want to go again to the Secretary of Treasury, Bessent, when he says, this is nothing new.
Go back all the way to Alexander Hamilton. Alexander Hamilton used them to raise revenue. He used them to protect industry. And President Trump has added the third leg of the stool, which is strategic. So, if we are thinking about a 10% global tariff, and let's assume that we we import about $3 trillion a year. So that's $300 billion, and that's a substantial revenue raiser that could then be used for working Americans on no tax on tips, no tax on Social Security, no tax on overtime, and for those buying autos, they can reduce their bills because interest on American-made cars will be tax deductible. So this is really a working class, the tariff and tax plan.
You caught a lot of what he had to say, in particular as he started talking about no tax on tariffs. I mean, no tax on overtime, no tax on cars if they're American-made. Then maybe you won't be paying that kind of tax again if you're financing and so forth. I don't know exactly how it's going to play out, so don't consider me an expert. I'm just picking up on what the Treasury Secretary suggested as to how it would work. And he pointed out we did it all the way back in the days of Hamilton, before we had cars, I should add. No, I was not there at that time, but I know we didn't. Or did we? I want you to hear from one of the economic advisors for Trump, because he also has a view that, again, this is going to support and back up Trump, but you still should hear him.
Now, when it comes to who pays for the tariffs, at the end of the day, the person who pays for an economic policy is what economists would call the more inflexible person. And the example that I like to give is if you're buying a house. So you're looking at a town to buy a house, and then the town raises the property tax rate. You can just decide to move to look at the next town over. But the person selling the house can't pick up the house and move it. You're flexible. The seller is inflexible. The seller has to lower their selling price to eat the property tax.
Well, that's a...
And the same thing...
I love that. Look, Kevin Hassett and I have talked about this for years. I mean, I think I like to use China as the exporting nation, but the exporters who are hit by that, they're going to have to eat half of it. They're going to eat half of it. I think that's what the evidence shows.
They'll eat much more than half because they're inflexible and we're flexible because we can substitute to home production. We can substitute to different countries to import from. The countries that have built their entire economies around exporting to the American consumer have no substitute. They are inflexible. They will eat the burden of the tax in the long run. And what that means is that they ultimately pay for the burden of the tariff.
Now, again, economics sometimes can be very hard to follow and understand. But the chair of the Council of Economic Advisors, Steve Marin, his point about if you were going to buy a house in a particular area and you find out that county is going to suddenly impose a 25% tax on all properties in their area, you say, well, we'll buy a county over. We won't face that. You have the flexibility to move. You as an American have a flexibility. Do I want to buy this even though it's costing more because of the tariffs, or will I turn to an American-made product or something cheaper? And a lot of the countries around the world are looking at how do we make our products cheaper even with the tariff? And it's already showing flashback in Britain. I'll get into that in a moment. But let's go back to the opposition, specifically Senator Rand Paul.
To those who still call themselves conservatives but now support tariffs, let me remind them that Milton Friedman said tariffs raise prices to consumers and waste our resources. To those who still have a fond memory of Ronald Reagan on my side, Ronald Reagan said, protectionism costs consumers billions of dollars, damages the overall economy, and destroys jobs. Ronald Reagan's vision for America can be seen in our trading relationships with Canada. In 1986, President Reagan said, our trade policy rests firmly on the foundation of free and open markets. I recognize the inescapable conclusion that all history has taught. The freer the flow of world trade, the stronger the tides of human progress and peace among nations. And it's absolutely true.
Now, since he referred to tariffs and Reagan did say at first tariffs seemed like a good idea, and then stated, and I'm quoting him, for a while it works, but only for a short time. What eventually occurs is homegrown industries start relying on government protection in the form of high tariffs. They stop competing. That can happen, but that's not a golden rule. It's the flow of the market. Virginia Senator Moreno says, I'm looking forward to it.
We also have to remember we're creating the best tax environment on earth. We're going to make the 2017 tax reform permanent that put more money in working class Americans' pockets. We're going to get rid of taxes on overtime, tips, and Social Security. We've massively lowered regulations, especially around energy. So energy prices are lower. You see what's going on with eggs, what's going on with gas. So you're lowering the cost of everything else and then raising wages. So it doesn't, you got to look at, prices go up 2 or 3%, but if real wages go up 5 or 6, which is the opposite of what happened during Biden, you have massive inflation and wages couldn't keep up.
Yeah.
So Americans will feel it. Plus, you got to remember, one of the things we haven't talked about well enough is $6 trillion in investment. I think the stock market is going to majorly correct upwards because when you pump $6 trillion of investment, that's only what's been announced so far. I think the stock market's going to go very, very high because you're investing $6 trillion in the United States. That's never happened before.
But again, Kentucky Senator Rand Paul says the tariffs are going to hurt you. We'll have to see, but he's sticking to his guns at this point.
Think about it. If you buy something you're trading, if you go to the store and you buy a smartphone and you give them $1,000, you want that smartphone and you don't lose. Doesn't matter where the money went, you got your smartphone. You only give money to somebody for something if you want it. If it's a voluntary trade, it's always equal. Or it's actually always mutually beneficial. And so when people say, oh, we've lost and China's winning and we have a trade deficit with China, America doesn't trade with China. An individual buys a product. You are the trader. When you go to Walmart and you buy something at Walmart and you say, my goodness, I can get this TV for $200 less than I could get it if there were only domestic TVs, you are the contractor. The U.S. government didn't buy the TV. You bought the TV and you did it because you saved $200. You're now $200 richer and you can go somewhere. You can buy gas to go on a trip somewhere. You are richer. But if trade were bad, you wouldn't buy the TV. You made the decision. The government didn't.
That is correct. You're making the decision. And if you're going to pay a higher price for it because of a tariff, that's your decision. It's also your decision not to buy that item. We're talking about not just free trade, but fair trade. That's what we're trying to accomplish here. And in fact, it's working for Britain. They're no longer part of the EU. EU unions, the European Union's being hit with a 20% tariff because now Brexit, Britain is out of it. They got hit with a 10% tariff. Coming up more.
You can connect with Larry on Twitter at Larry Connors USA.
I've got a phone number for you and a website where you can take a free, quick survey to learn how to use artificial intelligence, AI, to put your company on a fast track to the future. Here's the number. It's a 636 area code, 636-689-0545. 689-0545. This is PRI Global. And recently, the St. Louis Business Journal named PRI Global as a leading IT consulting company. 25 years working with hundreds of companies, several Fortune 500, locally and around the world. PRI Global has its own AI lab to develop what's best for your company. Take the free survey and be on your way to the future. 636-689-0545. 689-0545. Or go direct PRIGlobal.ai. PRIGlobal.ai. Looking for a great place to watch your favorite game? Lit Cigar Lounge in Chesterfield. TVs everywhere, premium cigars, special beers, single barrel whiskey. You do not have to be a member. There's a good chance we'll see each other at Lit Cigar Lounge. Plus, we can order from Napoli Brothers Pizza and Pasta. Our order will be delivered to our table within minutes. Sometimes hard to decide, but always the right decision at Napoli Brothers Pizza and Pasta in Chesterfield. I have several questions for you, but there's only one answer. Who has the most 5-star reviews for windows in St. Louis? Renewal by Anderson. Who is the Post-Dispatch Window Retailer of the Year? Renewal by Anderson. who is the J.D. Power Award winner 5 years in a row. The same, renewal by Anderson. Dial pound 250 and say Windows. Pound 250, say Windows. Renewal by Anderson, a better way to a better window. Hey, if you're 50 or older, you do not want to take any risk with your money. In fact, you want Leslie Consulting. My friend Bob Leslie can show you a gain and retain plan. It means that you never lose. Plus, you get up to a 20% bonus on day one. Leslie Consulting, a leader in brokerage and risk management. 314-721-0066. LeslieConsulting.com.
This is News Talk STL.
Roxanne, you don't have to put on the red light. Roxanne, you don't have to put on the red light. Roxanne.
This is Larry Connors USA. Larry Connors USA.
So back to the breaking news. New York City Democratic Mayor Eric Adams getting good news today from a federal judge dismissing his corruption case with prejudice, which means it cannot be brought back again. This thing is dead in the water.
An attorney for Mayor Adams tells Fox News, quote, the case against Eric Adams should never have been brought in the first place. And finally, today, the case is gone forever. From day one, the mayor has maintained his innocence. And now justice for Eric Adams and New Yorkers has prevailed. U.S. District Judge Dale Ho dismissed the case with prejudice, which, as you mentioned, means the case can't be brought against him again. That's actually different than what federal prosecutors requested. Judge Ho explained dropping the case permanently as necessary because, quote, it ensures that going forward, the charges in the indictment cannot be used as leverage over Mayor Adams or the city of New York.
And that's exactly what was being done. Now, a lot of folks are saying the charges were dropped because Adams has been in favor of Trump cutting illegals out of New York and out of our nation. He was making that call while Biden was in office. He was complaining then, but trying not to put it all on Biden. But he knew damn well it was because Biden had opened the borders. And then charges got filed against him. Under the Biden administration, riddle me this. How many federal charges were filed against Trump and anyone that supported him under the Biden administration? Were they all legit charges or were they political persecution? I'm not even asking you to make a final determination, just raise the question. And that was, of course, part of Adams' defense that they're coming after me because now I'm clearly supporting Donald Trump and trying to get illegals out of my city. We can't handle them. We can't pay for them. His original complaint to Biden was, we're going to need more money if you want us to take care of them. And, of course, then the citizens of New York, legal citizens, began to complain about what they were losing in services because it was being spent on illegals. And they were being dumped into various locations that might affect legal citizens, or they were being put up in the Roosevelt Hotel. Not necessarily one of the more posh hotels now, but at one time it was a grand dame of New York. So the citizens were against Adams, and he's coming up for election. He is now withdrawn from the Democrat Party. Said he's going to run as an independent. But I think he sees the writing on the wall that we all do. Get away from the Democrats. They don't have anything to stand for anymore. Their rating numbers are down to maybe 27% favorability. 27%. And then you had Cory Booker yesterday going crazy for 25 plus hours, railing and railing against Trump. No specifics in mind. He didn't need any specifics. Just get up there and complain about Trump because everybody wants to hear that. No, they don't. You were trying to preach to a choir that you thought was still around you. They, along with Elvis, have left the building. But he was still holding court in the House, standing there for, quote, a filibuster. for nothing other than trying to make himself look like I'm a leader for the Democrats. They will rally around me, not just for my midterm coming up, but for 2026 and the presidential nomination. Well, White House advisor Steve Miller said, I don't think Corey accomplished what he wanted.
I think that's the first ever filibuster in American history from Cory Booker in favor of getting men into women's sports, keeping our borders open, and making sure that we tax the wages of our tip workers in Nevada. So very courageously, Cory Booker has stood strong for those three issues. Here's what he never filibustered for. Here's what the Democrats never filibustered for. The dead bodies of American citizens raped, mutilated, and murdered by the illegal aliens that Joe Biden and his administration and Secretary Mayorkas funneled into our country during the invasion that took place over the last 4 years.
Where was the filibuster for that point? Well, they were in charge. They were in power then. And to stand up there and filibuster all these illegals coming in when every major Democrat in power at that time, and some still there, agreed with open borders, especially Biden and those who were running against him in the beginning in the preliminary primaries. That would include also his vice president. They were all on stage, and they were asked, do you think it's illegal to come into our country without permission? And do you think it should not be illegal? And every one of them, and eventually Biden even raised his hand and acknowledged that it should not be a crime to enter our country illegally. Can you name me one other country that would let you enter their country without showing a passport and knowing who you are before you would come in? Name me one. You can't even get into North Korea unless they want you. And then you better be worried. And if you want to try to get in North Korea, then you're already lost anyway. There's news out today that the Department of Homeland Security, and again, this is just a charge, that they've arrested a man for threatening ICE agents and Kristi Noem. We know ICE agents have been threatened previously. In this case, apparently things were escalating, so they moved in to make an arrest. So they don't care on the Democrat side, since they never lobbied and filibustered on behalf of protecting our nation and securing our nation. They don't make that an issue unless it will work for them. And actually, Adam Schiff is one of those who has found a way. I can talk out of both sides of my mouth. I'll come to him a little bit later before we wrap up. It's almost comical. It's almost like having, a Muppet, sock Muppet. You moving the lips with the Muppet and you saying whatever you want, changing your voice. They never know it's not the Muppet, or do they? Or a ventriloquist. Lips never move, but you're getting a message. Once again, to the opinion of White House advisor Steve Miller and Cory Booker's filibuster.
They released people into this nation, not people, monsters into this nation that were pedophiles, that were child rapists, that tortured women, that murdered moms and dads, that committed atrocities that we've never seen before in this country. And now they have the temerity to say that every single invader that Joe Biden let in should get their own individual judicial trial before they're deported, one at a time. Each one gets $1 million trial in front of a communist judge to decide whether or not we can send them home. How about hell no? How about we pick them up and we get them out of this country so they can't hurt anyone else?
And if you were going to give each one of them a trial, we're talking about a minimum of 8 million who entered during the Biden administration. That is a minimum. 8 million trials. Our entire justice system would come to a halt as we're focusing on, does this person have a right to be here or not, or a claim? That's exactly what the criminals would like. There's a story out of Massachusetts. what Democrats were doing, reference migrants as they call it. Massachusetts was touting about the falling number of migrants in their state emergency housing program. But they weren't pointing out that these, quote, migrants, illegals, make it clear, it's illegals, were not really leaving their state. What they were doing is moving around their shelter system. They were saying the state shelter system is down 30% since last year. They had something like 7,600 families in July of last year, down to 5,300. And they say it's because of changes in state requirements for state eligibility. But they did not point out that what they were doing is moving them into taxpayer-supported rent schemes, using taxpayer dollars to rent property and putting them in that instead of the state shelter. You want another example of something like that? Right from Los Angeles, from California. A shock for L.A. consumers. As a homeless tax, which they voted for, a homeless tax. You gotta love it and you laugh and you think they cannot continue to be quite this stupid. I beg to differ. But a new 0.25% sales tax to raise funds for services for the homeless has now gone into effect because of a referendum passed back in November. That's going to raise the sales tax. L.A. voters voted it in. And now they're seeing it take place, and the L.A. buyers and consumers not happy. They recently learned that $2.3 billion has been spent on homeless services just in Los Angeles. They think a sales tax is going to resolve it for them. You're going to create more homeless. You keep this up. Or more departures. Good news for moving companies, like my client, McGuire Moving. They could move anybody from California to here or Florida, wherever they want to go. But there'll be more exodus from California. You watch. Of course, the left is always going to be on the wrong side and never admitting it. But history does catch up to them. Perfect example coming up. 3 different cuts, very short cuts, of Adam Schiff before he became a senator. This is going to be fun. That story when we continue.
You are listening to Larry Connors, USA.
The Napoli heritage of fine dining continues with Napoli Kirkwood. Napoli Kirkwood, now open. So add that to Cafe Napoli in Clayton, Napoli 2 in Town and Country, Napoli 3 in St. Charles, right next door to Napoli C, and don't forget about Napoli Brothers Pizza and Pasta in the district, Chesterfield Valley. All of those locations, plus now, open, Napoli Kirkwood.
This is Larry Connors, USA. Larry Connors, USA.
On the day Donald Trump leaves office, the Justice Department may indict him.
Very strongly in favor of indicting the president when he is out of office.
I don't think the incoming president should be threatening his political opponents with jail time. That's not the kind of talk we should hear from a president in a democracy.
Well, now, wait a minute. There was Adam Schiff saying in 2 different occasions, 2018 and 2019, I think we should go after Trump. But then in 2024, knowing that Biden's going out and Trump's coming in, he changed his tune. May we replay that again? Now you understand you're talking about 2018 and 19 when Trump's in office, and then in 2024 when he knows that was when Biden was in office, and then 2024 when he knows Biden's out and Trump's coming in.
On the day Donald Trump leaves office, the Justice Department may indict him.
Very strongly in favor of indicting the president when he is out of office.
I don't think the incoming president should be threatening his political opponents with jail time. That's not the kind of talk we should hear from a president in a democracy.
But you had no problem saying it repeatedly when Trump was the one in office. You can't reason with these people. You do know that. I'm not even sure you could give them a piece of gum and they'd know what to do with it. Oh, yeah, you can tell where to put it. Oh, in their mouth. What were you thinking? Shame on you. There's a woman fencer. Fencing as in swashing fences, but as you know, in fencing. Allah, oh God, like they did. It's a very tough skill, and you must be powerful in it. She was facing a transgender in an open event in Maryland this past weekend. She realized his transgender, and what the woman fencer did, dropped to her knee and took off her mask, a sign of submission. There was not going to be a match. She was not going to participate. So she doesn't win. The guy does. The equivalent here is taking a sword to a gunfight. Not a good idea. Now, if you want to level the field in this case, let the transsexual man have his saber for fencing, and she shows up with a gun. Well, what do you think? Who would kneel then? That's not so hard to figure out, is it? Oh, the leftists. Thank you for all the material you provide me, by the way. I've got more than I can ever get to, but I'm working on it. That's why we're here every Monday, Friday through 6 to 8. And coming up, our second hour, we're going to focus again on understanding the good and the bad and the ugly of the tariffs, and there is some of each. Remember our pledge, one nation under God.
You can hear podcast of this program at Larry Connors USA Facebook. Larry Connors USA Facebook.
John Beal Roofing reminds you we are in the stormy season, and that means if you have even the smallest leak in your roof, you could soon have a much bigger issue. Call to John Beal to make sure that your biggest investment is protected. That call can save you major dollars. If you do get hit during a storm, John Beal has a rapid response team. Call 1-800-NEW-ROOF. 1-800-NEW-ROOF. 1-800-NEW-ROOF, John Beal. April is big at Lit Cigar Lounge, the place to be to watch the Masters, plus a major UFC fight, and of course baseball, all while enjoying a premium cigar and whiskeys. TVs in every direction. Make your plans. Check the Lit Cigar Facebook for more details. Plus, you can order food from Napoli Brothers Pizza and Pasta, delivered within minutes right to your table. By the way, we're in the season for great patio dining. Napoli Brothers Pizza and Pasta has your table waiting. Ackerman Toyota is #1 in sales for 2024. That is 2 years in a row. It's really no surprise. Ackerman has the largest customer lounge where you can relax, take your time choosing new or premium pre-owned. Ackerman at Hampton and 44. AckermanToyota.com. Thank you for making Ackerman Toyota #1 2 years in a row. AckermanToyota.com. Ackerman Toyota for life. It's that time of season when families, businesses are moving. For local or long distance, I endorse McGuire Moving. Get a date set soon before the schedules are booked. 314-241-0600. 241-0600. McGuire is constantly giving back to our veterans, such as Support Dogs for Our Brave. So with McGuire, you're getting excellent service and helping our vets. McGuireMoving.com. So many times, Vincent's Jewelers has helped me surprise someone special. Vincent's locally owned can do the same for you, and you don't have to break the bank to get something really nice, maybe even customized. The smile you're going to get back from that special someone, priceless. Check VincentsJewelers.com every day because new items are arriving and there are special deals. Vincent's, my only jeweler. VincentsJewelers.com. VincentsJewelers.com. I can tell you how to get a free quick quiz to see how artificial intelligence can boost your company's potential. You go to priglobal.ai, priglobal.ai. St. Louis Business Magazine listing PRI as one of the leading IT companies, and PRI has its own AI lab to develop what your business needs. priglobal.ai, priglobal.ai.
This is News Talk STL.
You want answers? I think I'm entitled. You want answers? I want the truth! You can't handle the truth!
This is Larry Connors USA. Larry Connors USA.
Got myself a gun. Mama always said I'd be the chosen one.
To those who still call themselves conservatives but now support tariffs, let me remind them that Milton Friedman said, tariffs raise prices to consumers and waste our resources. To those who still have a fond memory of Ronald Reagan on my side, Ronald Reagan said, protectionism costs consumers billions of dollars, damages the overall economy, and destroys jobs. Ronald Reagan's vision for America can be seen in our trading relationships with Canada. In 1986, President Reagan said, our trade policy rests firmly on the foundation of free and open markets. I recognize the inescapable conclusion that all history has taught. The freer the flow of world trade, the stronger the tides of human progress and peace among nations. And it's absolutely true.
Senator Rand Paul of Kentucky taking exception with the tariffs that Trump has rolled out for the, quote, Liberation Day. Now, he was fighting specifically on any taxes, tariffs, added tariffs against Canada because Trump was using it, quote, as an emergency order because of the fentanyl coming across the border from Canada and from Mexico. But the tariffs on Canada and Mexico were not specifically outlined by Trump yesterday, and the Treasury Secretary got asked about it. Well, we'll come back to that here shortly, but reference Rand Paul quoting Ronald Reagan, how accurate was he? And I'm a Rand Paul supporter. I'm also a Reagan supporter and a Trump supporter, but I don't support anyone blindly. I raise questions, I look, I inquire, the same thing you should do. I've spent decades building my credibility. One slip, one lie, one trick to get around you would destroy all of that. But I don't have to do that if you suddenly decide Larry is no longer truthful. That's your perception. And once you make that, I can never win you back. Not likely, anyway. I have had some challenge me directly, and after I finish talking to them and get them to calm down, this drama doesn't get us anywhere, let's discuss it, eventually I win them over, or at least to the extent that, well, maybe I was wrong about you. That's all I needed to hear. Maybe. And you might be right on some points. Hey, thanks for joining us. Hour number 2, Larry Connors USA, April 3rd, 2025. We're here every Monday through Friday for you from 6 to 8 p.m. When we're on the air, we are streaming video. I encourage you to watch. More and more are watching our stream, either when it's on or later pulling it up as a podcast. And I encourage you to do it. And if you're watching later as a podcast in particular, push share. Send it on to others so they can get involved in it. So how do you watch? Well, you go to NewsTalkSTL, Rumble, Facebook, or Twitter. Larry Connors USA, Rumble, or Facebook. And everything then goes up as a podcast at NewsTalkSTL podcast, LarryConnorsUSA.com, Larry Connors USA Facebook. And I'll remind you, for those who don't have our new app, the NewsTalkSTL app for your phone, it's better and improved compared to the other one. And the other one was great, but this one has a wheel of fun on it, you might call it. You can punch different things on it, and it will bring up podcasts of a previous program or communications direct to the host of the program. Check it out. NewsTalkSTL app, absolutely free for your phone. We need minimum amount of information from you, no cost, and we do not share your information to anyone. Heads up on your calendar, you know what April 15 is. Oh, yeah, the tax day thing. Well, let's have some fun the next day, April 16. Join us at St. Charles City Comedy Club. Here's what's happening. We have the mayor of Knox County, Tennessee. He's called a mayor, but he's actually, that's what they call the county leaders in Tennessee. Glenn Jacobs. That name ring a bell? Maybe the name Kane does. World Wrestling Federation, or WWE wrestler, I should say. Massive man. But not only does he talk politics and understand it, but he does it in a fun way. I don't know. Maybe I'll challenge him to an arm wrestling before it's over. But join us at the St. Charles Funny Bone, April 16. It's sponsored by the American for Prosperity Group. It's titled Torch the Tax, an evening with Mayor Glenn Jacobs. It costs you nothing to get in. You won't have to pay, but we have a limited amount of seats, so you need to apply for a seat. How do you do that? NewsTalkSTL. Go to NewsTalkSTL, our Facebook. You'll find where you register, and we'll put tickets aside for you. Simple as that. Look forward to seeing you. In fact, I'm hoping I will see you. Maybe you'll say, Larry, you're going to wrestle with them or what? Well, put me to the test. All right, back to the issue of the tariff tax, plus if it's a good, bad, or ugly, or a combination of all, and for whom. Now, while Rand Paul is speaking out against it and quoting Ronald Reagan, I'm not saying he misquoted Reagan, but there are other things Reagan said that should be added. So you can always pick a quote that works for you. I can do the same thing. Our Secretary of Treasury, Bessent, said, these tariffs, they're not new. They go all the way back in our history.
Go back all the way to Alexander Hamilton. Alexander Hamilton used them to raise revenue. He used them to protect industry. And President Trump has added the third leg of the stool, which is strategic. So, you know, if we are thinking about a 10% global tariff, and let's assume that we import about $3 trillion a year, so that's $300 billion, and that's a substantial revenue raiser that could then be used for working Americans on no tax on tips, no tax on Social Security, no tax on overtime, and for those buying autos, they can reduce their bills because interest on American-made cars will be tax deductible. So this is really a working class, the tariff and tax plan.
Now, you know, if this is going to include a tax reduction that you won't be paying income tax anymore on financing your car, used to be a time you didn't. And I didn't have a problem at that time, you know, financing a car because I could write it off. Then the law changed. Maybe we're going to go back the other way. A lot of this yet to be decided. Let's keep that in mind. We're just putting our toe into the water. But it is causing ripple effects. And Senator Rand Paul is making it very clear where he stands.
With regard to tariffs, let's be very clear. Tariffs are simply taxes. Tariffs don't punish foreign governments. They punish American families. When we tax imports, we raise the price of everything, from groceries to smartphones to washing machines to prescription drugs. Every dollar collected in tariff revenue comes straight out of the pockets of American consumers. Conservatives used to understand that tariffs are taxes on the American people. Conservatives used to be uniformly opposed to raising taxes because we wanted the private marketplace, the private individuals, to keep more of their income, so we were always for lower taxes. And yet now the mantra that's coming is we want higher taxes.
No, it's not.
What happened?
It's
Did we all of
not.
a sudden give up all the things we used to believe in as conservatives? I, for one, haven't. I still think more taxes is bad for the economy.
Senator Rand Paul, I agree. I'm not in favor of more taxes. I don't know anyone that wants to see tariffs imposed on other countries to bring a fair trade in play want more taxes. Now, you heard our Treasury Secretary Bessent refer back to Hamilton use it effectively. Rand Paul argues, look, he said, they have decimated us in the past. And he pointed out when McKinley put tariffs on in 1890, that party lost 50% of their seats. Then when Smoot-Hawley put their tariffs in the early 1930s, we lost the House and Senate for 60 years. He said, so the tariffs are not only bad economically, they're bad politically. I don't think that's going to play out now this way. I could be wrong, but we're a long ways from the days of McKinley, as we are from Hamilton. But the reaction we're already seeing, the New York Times, it's a disaster. That's their headline. It's a disaster. Global markets plunge after Trump unveils his tariffs. NBC News, Trump tariffs live updates. Global stocks plunge as U.S. allies plan reaction. AP, Dow opens 1,200 points down. I don't care where it closed today. I'm just trying to tell you this kind of fear-mongering going on, that's not good. But no one is proposing raising taxes. And in fact, if you're going to quote Reagan, let's go back to this issue. Reagan had acknowledged trade wars are detrimental to all countries involved. He said when prices increase due to tariffs, consumers reduce spending, leading to market shrinkage and job losses. That can happen if American companies are not making up the difference. And in fact, this writer is an opinion writer for the Arizona Republic. He said Ronald Reagan should school Trump on the stupidity of tariffs. That Reagan had pointed out in the past, in a trade war, businesses shut down, millions lose their jobs. What happened when our businesses left America and went overseas? How many jobs were lost then? And how many jobs are going to be coming back now that Hyundai and others say they're going to invest billions in our economy? Billions. Hyundai going to open up a whole new plant. Going to spend, maybe 3,000 workers to build it, 1,200 or so to operate it routinely. Then we come to the issue of China. And the response from China, yet to be measured, but let's hear an opinion.
When China entered the World Trade Organization, everybody told us how wonderful it was going to be because we're going to get all these cheap goods and everybody's welfare was going to be so much better. You know, if you go back and look at the 8 years of President Bush and the 8 years of President Obama, do you know that over those 16 years that the typical family only made $80 cumulatively? So their increase in welfare was $5.50 a year about over the 15 years after China entered the WTO. So there was no gain in real income because while we were getting the cheap goods, we were losing jobs, destroying cities, destroying towns, and so on. And President Trump announced in a very historic action today that that's going to end, that we're going to create jobs in America, we're going to make stuff again here in the U.S., we're going to make real wages go up. We're never, ever, ever going to see like the Bush-Obama years where we get $5 a year of increased income.
That is the National Economic Council Director, Kevin Hassett, dealing with China. And you got to keep in mind, we're not hitting them tariff for tariff, as originally Trump had suggested, reciprocal. In some cases, some nations, if we're imposing or they're hitting our goods with a 50% tariff, we'll hit them with a 25% tariff. trying to make it a little easier for them, trying to make them understand, come along to get along. Indiana Senator Banks.
The decision by President Trump today to impose reciprocal tariffs will be so good for Indiana. We already are the largest manufacturing state per capita in the country, a lot of really good paying manufacturing jobs, and the top steel producing state. In my small hometown in Northeast Indiana, the best jobs are at a local steel mill called Steel Dynamics. My dad retired from a factory that made axles for cars, and those are the manufacturing jobs that President Trump is bringing back from overseas to the United States of America. More made in America cars is good for Indiana's economy, and Hoosiers know it.
Hoosiers know it, and all of us know it. If all these steel plants that we've shuttered reopen, more money coming in from China and other countries, yes, we're going to benefit. And you don't want to look more on the global impact of the tariffs, specifically Australia, President Trump.
You have Australia bans, and they're wonderful people and wonderful everything, but they ban American beef, yet we imported $3 billion of Australian beef from them just last year alone. They won't take any of our beef. They don't want it because they don't want it to affect their farmers. And you know what? I don't blame them, but we're doing the same thing right now, starting about midnight tonight, I would say.
And those were his remarks yesterday, so they went into effect overnight. And yet again, headline from CNN, Dow plunges, dollar weakens, recession fears grip Wall Street. You keep shouting it long enough, you'll find more and more going along that road. It could be equivalent to yelling fire in a crowded theater when there's really smoke because someone is smoking a cigarette in the theater. Look at what's happened with the United Kingdom already. United Kingdom, through Brexit, had withdrawn from the European Union. You recall that battle, I'm sure. So Liberation Day, all these tariff announcements put in place in various scale with trading partners such as China, slapped with significantly higher import taxes than others. The EU, the entire European Union group, was hit with a 20% tariff. The UK, which had withdrawn from the bloc in 2020, got a 10% tariff. And if you go back to Reagan's remarks in full, Rand Paul is right. He was not in favor of them. I'll quote him directly here. For a while, it works, but only for a short time. That I agree with. What eventually occurs is homegrown industries start relying on government protection in the form of high tariffs. That can happen. Another point Reagan made, they stopped competing and stopped making the innovative management and technological changes needed to succeed in world markets, talking about U.S. businesses. We don't do that if we continue to support our local businesses. These tariffs can certainly go 180 degrees from what Trump has predicted. But they can also go right on track. Will there be some bumps? Yes. But it's not going to be a full roller coaster. Coming up, terrorists inside our universities. Lock and load. Ready on the right.
You are listening to Larry Connors, USA.
Question, do you know what vermiculite is? It is an insulation in the attics of hundreds of thousands of homes and public buildings. Looks like kitty litter, but often contains asbestos. Wellington Environmental is the largest company in the Midwest that can remove that hazard for you. Wellington has what is called the General, a powerful industrial vacuum that can suck vermiculite out of the attic. Hang on, there's something else you should know. Many of you might qualify for up to a $4,000 rebate. You should at least contact Wellington to see if you qualify. And here's something else. Wellington arrives at the time they give you, not sometime within 4 hours. 314-644-4930, 644-4930. WellingtonSTL.com, WellingtonSTL.com. Wellington Environmental, your world cleaner, better, safer. And be well with Wellington. One of the greatest pleasures in life is giving something special to someone just because. Vincent's Jewelers can help you, and you should know that Vincent's has helped raise almost $2 million for local charities. Vincent's Jewelers, St. Louis's premier, full-service, locally owned jewelry store. Check vincentsjewelers.com every day for new items. vincentsjewelers.com. My only jeweler, vincentsjewelers.com. McGuire Moving is silver certified, which means they are great at relocating senior citizens. In fact, McGuire is a household name because McGuire understands the stress involved when moving older adults. So if you or family members need help moving, I highly recommend McGuire Moving. 314-241-0600. 241-0600. Get a free in-home estimate. McGuireMoving.com. There is a speakeasy in Cottleville, but you need a passcode. So go to the Oak Street Inn and Lounge Facebook, get your passcode to one of the hottest new spots in the area. Amazing food, 7 hotel rooms, 2-bedroom penthouse, and a speakeasy. I got my passcode. Get yours. Let's enjoy the speakeasy in Cottleville. You get your code by going to Oak Street Inn and Lounge Facebook. Oak Street Inn and Lounge Facebook.
This is News Talk STL.
Never would have hitchhiked to Birmingham if it hadn't been for love. Never would have called the train to Louisiana if it hadn't been for love. Never would have run through the blinding rain without $1 to my name if it hadn't been for love. Never would have seen the trouble that I'm in if it hadn't been for love.
This is Larry Connors USA. Larry Connors USA.
Mahmoud Khalil is not an isolated case. The American universities, which attract students from all over the world, have become a strategic target for extremist organizations because the student visa programs allow foreign students from various countries, including Palestinians, to attend them. But some of these students don't come just to study, but also to disseminate extremism and to foment hatred. In 2019, for example, an investigation of the American National Security Agency into a network of foreign students at the University of California revealed that they had used their academic positions to spread the extremist ideas of Al-Qaeda and that there were other cases of this sort, like that of a Pakistani student at New York University who turned the university's student dorms into centers for recruiting young people to ISIS. These examples demonstrate how the universities can be used to inculcate extremist ideology.
That is a woman translating remarks written by a Mideast scholar dealing with terrorism. Specifically, he is Salam, I should say, Al-Katabi, an emirate political analyst. And he's pointing out that this case in Columbia University involving Khalil, the one who's obviously we're trying to deport and get out of the country, revoking his green card, and if he were still on a student visa, revoking that as well. He says that these are the kinds of guys that have been trying to come in our universities, have been infiltrating, and have been basically duping our young students. Fresh out of high school, bright for a new future. Where's the frat party, the Surratt party? Where do we go for the beer party? Oh, we're going to school. Oh, we're going to learn something. No, first we need to demonstrate. We need to be in the streets and in the hallways protesting Israel, shouting to the Jewish students, threatening them, slandering them. American universities have become strategic targets for these extremist activities. They know how to exploit immigration laws. They know how to get more of their people inside. Al-Katabi noted several items that I want to go through here. He said a 2019 National Security Administration investigation into al-Qaeda sympathizers embedded in academic programs at the University of California, that's what they found, numerous ones there as well. They did also find that a Pakistani student at NYU was turning dorms into ISIS recruitment hubs. And there was a conference at UC Berkeley where the Hamas October 7 attacks were praised on campus. A 2024 course that described Hamas as, quote, a revolutionary resistance force. They later had to retract that after some backlash. And if you look at how these students are getting into these schools, do you have a young student trying to get into some of the prestigious Ivy League schools? You should know this. Almost every one of them have 40 to 50% of their student body made up of foreigners. Nothing wrong with that, except these universities are in our nation, and those universities are getting federal dollars, your taxpayer dollars. Oh, you don't have a kid that goes there? You're still helping pay for Harvard and others through tax dollars. And Trump has said, if you guys are going to continue to allow these terrorists to run the halls and control your dormitories, and basically, you remember the scene where the Ivy League professors were in front of the committee hearing on terrorism and asking, do you not consider a student shouting slurs and calling out Jewish students and anti-Semitic remarks and other things, do you not consider that at least a breach of your student conduct code? Well, I don't know. I'd have to see it in context. There is no damn context other than the fact that they were basically either verbally, sometimes physically, assaulting or threatening Jewish students. And any student that they didn't like and thought they were on the wrong side. So this Mahmoud Khalil story now is one of the prominent faces of Columbia University's apartheid divest group. It was called to boycott companies that support Israel and stop investing in them. Tension started increasing, obviously, after the war in Gaza started. Khalil participated in some, drawing harsh criticism, who accused him of promoting Hamas terrorist propaganda. His attorneys denied that. I'll let them state that. But his case is pointing to a deeper underlying issue. The Middle East media, which is billing itself as an American-based, nonpartisan, nonprofit group, co-founded to make sure Americans get the truth. But I want to point out for you, because I never try to hide anything from you, it was co-founded by an Israeli intel officer. So it could already be slanted pro-Jerusalem, anti-Muslim. But I think it's basically on the fact that we all agree, or should agree, not every Muslim is a jihadist, but every jihadist is a Muslim. So once again, back to the woman who is reading a transcribed report presented by Emirate political analyst Salim Al-Khatib.
The troubling fact is that these universities are usually incapable of uncovering these instances or coping with them, due to their commitment to the principles of freedom of expression. Moreover, the competition between the world's universities makes them less conservative in their choice of students, which leaves them open to exploitation by foreign countries and elements. The extremist organizations exploit the concentrations of students and the culture clubs as fronts for disseminating their ideas. For example, groups were formed such as Students for Justice in Palestine, SJP, or Columbia University's Apartheid Divest, CUAD, which purport to promote humanitarian issues but usually just serve as a platform for disseminating discourse that is anti-Semitic or supportive of terrorism.
In other words, they know what's going on and they just don't really do anything to shut it down. Just 2 days ago, out of Oregon came a report that pro-Palestinian students demonstrating in support of Hamas terrorism may have had advanced knowledge of that same massacre. This is a bombshell revelation occurring because it relates to the Columbia University groups that were mobilized in advance to provide propaganda and communications to cover the actions of the PLO, who shot, raped, tortured, killed those they took dead or alive from Jerusalem. The suit filed by victims and relatives of what happened. And this report I'm reading was attributed to an Oregon television station, talking about how the Columbia students basically reactivated a dormant Instagram account just minutes before the attacks began, and they engaged in a pro-Hamas messaging afterwards, even going so far as to issue a statement in support of the massacre. That's happening on our student campuses. Not on all of them, but wherever it's allowed to rear its head and thrive and not beat back. If you find one cockroach in your kitchen, you know there's going to be more. And until you get them all out, you have an infestation. They're still there. Back to the translations of the Mid-Eastern spokesman, the Salem Kotebi.
For instance, in 2012, a U.S. State Department investigation exposed a funding network designed to support Hamas via American charitable associations. This network enabled Hamas to expand its influence within these associations and use Palestinian and other foreign students to spread its ideas. If the charitable associations and humanitarian organizations are a traditional mechanism that is being used by dubious elements to finance terrorism, then the universities and academic institutions have been turned by the extremist organizations into a strategic platform for disseminating their ideas and recruiting supporters. This exploitation goes beyond financial or logistic assistance. It is aimed at infiltrating young minds and creating a new generation of activists who espouse extremist ideas without realizing that they are extremist.
They just don't realize it. They are useful idiots. Back to the papers filed in that lawsuit. In one report, incredibly serious allegations in addition to what I've already cited for you. But groups known as, quote, Students for Justice in Palestine, Jewish Voices for Peace. Now, you'd think that would be a Jewish organization. And within our lifetime, those three are all considered part of the propaganda arm of Hamas, as alleged in the lawsuit that's underway. Yeah, they can wrap themselves in like a name like Jewish Voice for Peace. Well, we have an American Voice for Peace, too, but that does not call for killing the Jews. Does not call from river to the sea. We've got to eradicate this in our campuses. Attorney General Bondi, FBI Director Patel, and others should start lining some of them up for prosecution.
You can connect with Larry on Twitter at Larry Connors USA.
Question: are you looking to unlock the full potential of artificial intelligence for your business? I want you to meet my friends at PRI Global, named by the St. Louis Business Journal as a leading IT consulting firm. 25 years helping local and worldwide companies. PRI Global has a free survey to determine where your company stands in your AI journey. You simply go to priglobal.ai. priglobal.ai. And I also have a phone number, so get ready to copy that number. And I'll remind you that PRI Global has its own AI lab, creating, adapting, developing, pushing the boundaries for what AI can do for you. Here's the number, 636-689-0545. 636-689-0545. Or visit priglobal.ai. priglobal.ai. Here's great news. Napoli Kirkwood is now open. So that means fine dining right in the heart of Kirkwood. So you have the original Cafe Napoli in downtown Clayton, Napoli 2, Town and Country, Napoli 3 on the streets of St. Charles, right next door to Napoli C, plus Napoli Brothers Pasta and Pizza in the Chesterfield Valley. All of those locations, and now adding Napoli Kirkwood. What a great place to dine. Napoli Kirkwood, now open. Renewal by Anderson is having a huge sale. Buy one, get one 50% off. Renewal has the most 5-star reviews in St. Louis, is the Post-Dispatch Window Retailer of the Year, winning the J.D. Power Award 5 years in a row, plus the nation's best warranty. For a limited time, buy one, get one 50% off. Details at rbastl.com. rbastl.com. Renewal by Anderson. You've worked hard for your money, so protect it. Meet my friend Bob Leslie and ask about the Gain and Retain Plan. Leslie Consulting, 40 years in the St. Louis area as a leader in brokerage and risk management. Call 314-721-0066, 721-0066. Oh, and ask Bob how he was the L.A. Dodger #1 pick. LeslieConsulting.com.
This is NewsTalk STL.
This is Larry Connors USA. Larry Connors USA.
So back to the breaking news. New York City Democratic Mayor Eric Adams getting good news today from a federal judge dismissing his corruption case with prejudice, which means it cannot be brought back again. This thing is dead in the water.
An attorney for Mayor Adams tells Fox News, quote, the case against Eric Adams should never have been brought in the first place. And finally, today, the case is gone forever. From day one, the mayor has maintained his innocence. And now justice for Eric Adams and New Yorkers has prevailed. U.S. District Judge Dale Ho dismissed the case with prejudice, which, as you mentioned, means the case can't be brought against him again. That's actually different than what federal prosecutors requested. Judge Ho explained dropping the case permanently as necessary because, quote, it ensures that going forward, the charges in the indictment cannot be used as leverage over Mayor Adams or the city of New York.
And that's an excellent point. Now, there are those, obviously, on the left, and probably some on the right, that say, well, this is a political action to protect Adams because he's siding now with Trump. Let's back up a moment. Adams was elected mayor of New York City as a Democrat. It also served as the head of the police. I thought he might be really good for them because he understood law and order. But he quickly found that the pressures of that office and the pressures from D.C. to New York City mean that you bow down when needed. He did this a little bit for a while, but as more and more illegals were shipped into his into his city, he began to realize we can't do this. He was one of the first mayors to cry out, we need more money. Well, the Biden administration didn't like that because it suggests that we're responsible for your issue, when it's really Governors Abbott and DeSantis sending more of them to you. Not mentioning at the time that the Biden administration was also flying illegals from the border any place they wanted to go in our country. You're free to roam about the country. A lot of them want to go to New York. Yeah, I want to go to New York, the Big Apple, everybody. They had a minimum of 800,000 illegals. They didn't know what to do with them, couldn't afford to take care of them, didn't have housing. So what they ended up doing, well, we will open up the Roosevelt Hotel, an old hotel, and still in use some, but it's not the Grand Dame it was at one point, but it will suffice for the illegals. They have a bed, a room, a shower. Oh, what about the New York City homeless? They were not included in a room with a bed and a shower. What about where some veterans were trying to live on the street? Were they brought in? No, they were not included. Adams saw all of this happening, and again, the Biden administration doing nothing about it. So charges got filed against Adams alleging some corruption. I don't know if he's guilty of what he was charged with or not, but I know a pattern when I see it. And the pattern was the same kind of thing against Trump, DA Alvin Bragg, and New York Attorney General Letitia James, all going after Trump on basic fiction. Oh, they got a conviction on one, convicted felon, but it was a useless win. It just gave Trump more power. Adams now has decided he's got an election coming up. And as the judge was pointing out, we're dismissing the case with prejudice. It means he cannot be charged again. So you can't threaten him that we're going to continue the prosecution. Not on this case. Now, they may devise some others, but you cannot go after him again on these charges. So he is going to run for re-election, but he's leaving the Democrat Party. No, he is not joining the Republican Party so far. He is joining the independents. And right now, there are probably a lot more independents than Democrats that would go along. The Democrat favorability rating, according to one CNN survey, showing it down to 27% favorability for Democrats. That is a fall from grace, big time. And the issue with the illegals continues. And here's something you should know that they're trying to walk around and hide from you. First of all, let me deal with a comment from a congressman, Gomez. Congressman Jimmy Gomez of California. Please do not lose control of your vehicle if you're driving when I read his statement. I don't want to be blamed for you having an accident. So there, I have warned you. It's on recording. And you've had plenty of time to either pull off the side or take a tighter grip on the wheel. Congressman Jimmy Gomez said, and I'm quoting, Joe Biden, quote, did take big steps during his administration. He's referring to secure the border. And he adds, Biden, quote, also was focused on cracking down on fentanyl in a way that actually cracks down. Congressman Gomez is crack up and cracking me up in the process. He was asked specifically on an interview with CNN. He actually gets a hard question, or at least could have been. Do you wish Joe Biden had done more on immigration during his tenure? Gomez, and I'm quoting him in full here, well, wishing is not going to change the facts, right? So I think that one of the things we've got to look at is that Biden did take big steps during his administration. You saw a rapid decline in illegal border crossings. Also focused on cracking down on fentanyl in a way that actually cracks down. We know that for a fact that fentanyl, 80% of it, comes at ports of entry, delivered, carried by U.S. citizens. We should be focusing on that to make our country safer. The man's an idiot. First of all, breaking down what he had to say, saying that Biden took big steps and we had a rapid decline in illegal border crossing. That's because they declared them, here's a temporary order that allows you to come in. You're no longer illegal. Or we'll put an app on your phone you can pick up anywhere in the world from South America or the Middle East and pre-file for an entry form to come to the U.S. So you're not illegal anymore. And fentanyl continues to be smuggled across the border by those illegals. And yes, it has in other ways as well. And of course, a lot of these illegals included unaccompanied alien children. When they came across, they might have only been 4 or 6 years old. Homeland Security really didn't have time or effort and the ability to fully verify who the kids were going to. The child might not be able to speak any English, and the Spanish officers couldn't get enough information, or Mexican officers couldn't get enough information, but they had a phone number attached to them. So they would call that. This says, this is Rosa, your niece. Oh, yes, I was expecting Rosa. Please put her on a flight to Portland, Oregon for me. And we did. We gave 4-year-old Rosa a flight to Portland and maybe to a sex den and her death. We didn't have the ability to check out who was the so-called uncle. And we have a lot of these who were brought in as unaccompanied that have obviously grown in the last 4 years. Maybe they came across as 13. That's still a child. 16 still qualifies as a child, since they're now maybe 20. There's a federal judge born in Mexico, appointed by Joe Biden. He is now blocking Donald Trump from defunding free lawyers for the unaccompanied alien children. This happened just yesterday. This judge was born in Mexico City, was appointed by Biden, became the latest judge blocking Trump from carrying out America First. The judge wrote a temporary restraining order saying this is irreparable harm resulting from the defendant's actions, weighing in favor of temporary injunctive relief, and you cannot shut down funding. The Biden administration had secured $200 million in federal contracts to give lawyers to represent these unaccompanied children in court. $200 million. Oh, and you can bet the lawyers were lined up. Give me some. Give me some. I'll take some. I'm not putting down the lawyers. I've got a lot of good friends who are lawyers. But they also know when there's a scam in the making. Trump was trying to shut that money down. If you want a lawyer to defend you, you either have to pay for it or you have to rely on a court-appointed attorney, which may not be the best attorney, but it is an attorney. So once again, a lower court judge, these rogue judges, are imposing a law that will affect our entire nation. I have a question for you in closing. Have you already decided, just in this day, since Trump announced it from the Rose Garden yesterday, and watching the markets down and how they ended up settling today, and hearing all the headlines screaming, death, it's a death spiral we're in because of what Trump did. Have you read and seen all of those, assuming you did? Have you decided if the tariffs are going to help or hurt our economy? I want you to listen again, please, to Trump's message in the Rose Garden yesterday.
In the coming days, there will be complaints from the globalists and the outsourcers and special interests and the fake news. Fake news will always complain. But never forget, every prediction our opponents made about trade for the last 30 years has been proven totally wrong. They were wrong about NAFTA. They were wrong about China. They were wrong about the Trans-Pacific Partnership, which would have been a disaster if I didn't terminate it. If I didn't terminate that, United Auto Workers, you would have had no jobs in this country. You would have had no jobs. It was all going to other countries. In my first term, they said tariffs would crash the economy. Instead, we built the greatest economy in the history of the world. And again, I have great respect for President Xi of China, great respect for China, but they were taking tremendous advantage of us, and I commend them for that. I say, hey, if you can get away with it, that's okay. But, they understand exactly what's happening, and they probably, most of them are saying it's about time they did something, but, and they're going to fight, and they're going to fight fair. Everyone's going to fight. It's like, I say to the leaders, look, you got to take care of your country, but we have to start taking care of our country now. We can't do what we've been doing for the last 50 years.
No, we can't. And this is not meant to punish these countries. It's meant to level the playing field. We want trade, free trade, fair trade. But some examples cited yesterday in the Rose Garden, they were pointing out that specifically on rice, there's a 700% tariff from Japan on American rice. Any U.S. rice that goes into Japan is hit with a 700% tariff. There's a 100% tariff from India on any of our ag products we ship to India. We have not been punishing them with those kinds of tariffs. And Trump isn't punishing them dollar for dollar. He did originally talk about a reciprocal tariff. You hit us with 20%, we will hit you with 20. It's not that you hit us with 20, we hit you with 80. And in fact, he's gone the other way. You're hitting us with a 20% tariff, we're going to hit you with a 10% tariff. It won't hurt you that bad, but it also won't hurt us. Pardon me. You heard earlier Rand Paul railing against this is going to create more taxes for the Americans, and referring to Ronald Reagan making similar statements, which in fact he did. But Reagan was also always about fairness. And that's the point here. It's not just putting a tariff on to put a tariff on. It's fair trade, free trade, fair trade. I'm looking at a piece that was written in Breitbart. I don't know who did it. I'm going to have to give them credit for it, though. Might have been the economics editor, John Carney. He said, given the trade barriers faced by U.S. businesses and workers all around the globe and all the gnashing of teeth over Trump's tariff proposals, reminds me of the words of the prophet Jeremiah, quote, they dress the wounds of my people with very little care, saying, peace, peace, when there is no peace at all. The words of Jeremiah. And he adds those words were repurposed by Patrick Henry in the spring of 1775. It is in vain, sir, to extenuate the matter. Gentlemen may cry, peace, peace, but there is no peace. We are going to have trade, free trade, fair trade. Again, thanks for listening. Remember our pledge, one nation under God.
You can follow Larry on Larry Connors USA Facebook. Larry Connors USA Facebook. This is Larry Connors USA. Larry Connors USA.